Morning, everyone. Welcome to In Cloud We Trust. I'm technology correspondent Lisa Martin. I've got two guests here with me today to talk about a reality check, Salesforce backup and Salesforce data recovery service. Please welcome Chad Horner, the key account manager at Druva and the Salesforce subject matter expert. Chad, welcome to the program.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
And Kashyap Patel is here as well at Druva, Senior Director of Product Management. Kashyap, excited to talk to you and unpack what this reality check actually means.
Sure, great. Thanks, Lisa. Glad to be here.
All right, guys, so as we always do in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to talk about three things with respect to this reality check. The first one is Salesforce has reinstated its data recovery service. What is it? What does that mean? What some of the gaps are? Then we're going to talk about the common misconceptions we talked about before, but we're going to repeat it because we think it bears repeating. The common misconceptions that SaaS applications protect customers' data. And the third subject that we always leave you with is advice and recommendations if you're a Salesforce customer and are looking to find the right data protection solution. All right, Chad, let's go ahead and start with you. The reinstated Salesforce data recovery, this was retired just about a year ago. Now it's back. Talk to us about what it is and what your thoughts are as to what's going on.
Yeah, correct. So last year, I think it was July, they discontinued the Salesforce Recovery Service. And the main reason why they did this is because there was very small usage of it, and it wasn't really meeting the standards of what Salesforce wanted to provide their customers as a recovery service. And then also there was a lot of different third-party applications out on the App Exchange, and so they kind of advise you to go to one of those managed packages to go ahead and take a backup of your Salesforce data. So that's one of the reasons why they went away with it. But apparently this March, they went ahead and just reinstated. They brought it back. They had customer feedback saying that they wanted at least some kind of fail-safe provided by Salesforce to go ahead and have a recovery of data in case something did happen inside their Salesforce org. So they initially brought it back in March, and now it's available. It's live for customers to use, but it's not going to be the most robust solution and nothing that a customer should rely on to go ahead and back up and protect that data inside their Salesforce environment.
All right, let's dig into that more, Chad. Let's talk about some of the gaps. If we think about one of the first ones that you mentioned to me the other day, this is not 100% guaranteed. Unpack that.
Yeah, correct. So there is no 100% guarantee that Salesforce can go ahead and bring back all of the data that you lost inside your Salesforce environment. So there's four kind of keys you want to look at when you're looking at a backup solution. You want to go ahead and look at the lower RPO, RTO timeframe. You want to make sure it has the data coverage and the availability of everything to bring back and restore. You want to look at the security, make sure everything's protected in the back end. And you also want to kind of have the automation ease with it. But with the recovery service, they can't guarantee they're going to bring back all the data set. They try to get you as much as they can, but there's no 100% guarantee that everything is going to be returned to you in those CSV files that they're giving you.
Second thing I want to dig into a little bit more with you, Chad, and then Kashyap, I want to get your opinion as well, is the long RTO. We're talking almost 2 months for Salesforce to provide CSV files. Talk to us about that and what the potential impact is.
Yeah, so just to kind of start off with, Salesforce gives you kind of a time frame of when they can return CSV files to you. They average about 6 to 8 weeks, saying, hey, once you get a support case inside of Salesforce, we'll go ahead and have what we can pull from our servers and a CSV file and return those back in 6 to 8 weeks. But then it's up to you to go ahead and manually import that back into Salesforce. I know, Kashyap, you probably have a lot of experience doing this since you're on the development side. You can walk through kind of that process of restoring those records through data loader or whatever process that you want to use. You can probably elaborate a little more on that than I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's actually a very complex process to get data in as CSV files back into Salesforce, and that's really been a challenge. So we do a variety of things like disable validations, triggers, workloads, things like that. That really helps to ensure that you get a higher success ratio of getting some of these records recovered back in. But the more complicated part is really just maintaining the relationships between the records. And if you have a very hierarchical data set, very complex sort of a data schema, it gets very complicated to get all those records back in, remap all the IDs, get everything tied together, the way that it was before. And then, the other part about all this is dealing with things like circular references between records. That can be super complicated to try to recover those records. And, and then, now you span that across a large data loss incident, maybe 10,000 records, it becomes nearly impossible to do that manually.
Well, the manual restore is a huge challenge, the time consumption, but also we're talking about, Keshav, we're talking about business critical data, customer revenue data, customer prospect data. This is not data that is okay to be without for 6 to 8 weeks, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, businesses rely on this data to operate and just do their day-to-day activities. And having the sales team down, if you think about how many resources depend on Salesforce data day in, day out, and if they're not able to do their job, I mean, right away there's significant loss in revenue and in just proficiency. And so getting that data is going to be super critical, and getting it back quickly, that's the art. And so if you're having to rely on manual functions to do that, there's no way you're going to be able to get it back in any sort of reasonable time. And so that's why it's really critical to have in place a solution that can automatically get that data back in and get it back very, very quickly and reliably.
You're also looking at what kind of data set lives inside of Salesforce now. So Salesforce originally started off as a basic CRM where you held your customer data. But now with the expansion of what Salesforce can do, you have your Service Cloud to handle all your cases. So all your customer success is kind of handling there. You have different platforms where you can build out on Financial Force or different things where you can do accounting onto it. You can do human resources. You can do legal. So Salesforce is starting to really touch every entity inside or department inside an organization. So it's no longer just that sales critical data set you're looking at. You're looking at company-wide data set. And if you lost that, it's not just sales that's going down. It's going to be a lot of different departments that are going to be just stuck and stagnant for a day or two now, or 6 to 8 weeks.
That's a great point. The cross-functional impact there, and also not to mention too the high cost. Chad, I think you have some information on kind of like the minimum that a customer can expect if they have to use the data recovery service.
Yeah, so the minimum cost to go ahead and use that recovery service is $10,000 just to kind of get them to start searching for those records. And the larger the data set is that you lost, the higher that price kind of goes. So it's incremental depending on how much data set you lost, but the starting price is $10K. It just depends on how long it's going to be. But then you also have your time cost as far as how long it's going to go ahead and get that data to be back on the Salesforce. You have brand reputation loss. So customers are going to be less kind of associated with your brand because they're going to be more kind of mad at your delays it's taking to get them the information they need. And then also just the resources, the person that's going to have to go ahead and restore those, the wasted time and efficiencies there is just additional costs as well.
Right, and those hidden costs can really add up. And I think in today's cancel culture, brand reputation is absolutely critical for any company in any industry. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, let's move on to our second topic, which is one of those common misconceptions. Keshav, I want to get your perspectives on this, and that is that SaaS applications are protecting customer data. Debunk that.
Yeah, absolutely. So SaaS application providers, these guys are responsible for providing the service, right? You still own your data. You're still responsible for the cleanliness of your own data. And if the service goes down, and they are not there to get your data back. They're there to get the application service back up, and then they go and apply that application service, to your data. And so, with that, your data is your responsibility. And for that reason, that's why you need to, basically have a separate sort of application package out there to handle the data backups and this is not true of just Salesforce. I mean, really any other SaaS platform that's out there. You have to do your own due diligence. You have to do your own kind of protection of that data. And a lot of the SaaS providers, they do a pretty good job of protecting that data, making sure there's a hot side of redundancy kind of built into the system. But at the end of the day, it's your data, and you have to you basically have to protect it. So, Chad, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so Salesforce believes in that shared model where they're going to provide the infrastructure and the security of the platform. And like Keshav kind of mentioned, they will do kind of some redundancies in the back end to protect that data set. And Everything's built on AWS, which is one of the highest secure kind of backend servers in the world. So it's gonna take a lot for everybody to kind of infiltrate what AWS and Salesforce has. But majority of data loss is not coming from Salesforce side; it's coming from the actual customer. And so Salesforce or the customer is responsible for the data set they put inside there. They're responsible for the access controls into Salesforce, and they're responsible for the change management that goes along with the new code. They're going ahead and put it in there. So if something was to happen by accident for human error, where they deleted some records and it cascaded and deleted a lot of the child records as well, they're responsible for that. If for some reason that a user that does not normally have access to Salesforce gains access to Salesforce and deletes some records or anything like that, they are responsible for that one. And then also any kind of deployments or integrations with outside systems, you are responsible for that. So if you deployed some code and that code changed a lot of field values by accident or deleted some records by accident, that is your responsibility to go ahead and protect that data set. It's not on Salesforce's responsibility. And so those are kind of the three main things that if with this shared model, Salesforce handles the infrastructure and the security around it, but you handle those kind of three main aspects.
And in terms of customer data, we can't not talk about security. We all saw what happened in 2020 with the explosion in ransomware. Things are continuing. We just saw what happened with the Colonial Pipeline. This is people that in any industry, whether it's critical infrastructure or not, that have to be really mindful of ensuring that you have all of the security measures in place, because as you both say, it's Mr. Customer and Ms. Customer, it's your data. Any comments on the security front and just kind of some of the things that we saw in the last year?
Yeah, so ransomware is definitely becoming a bigger issue nowadays. I think the case numbers that we're seeing for at least 2021 have been astronomical compared to previous years. Salesforce is definitely a little bit different than other systems inside of a customer's network. It's like an external service, but you can still be susceptible to ransomware inside of Salesforce because there's a way to get that data set out of Salesforce and get into the hands of any kind of an intruder. So one of those things is kind of with the weekly export, which people are using right now, where they're taking the exports or they're downloading the CSV files on a weekly basis and storing those either on the computer that's doing the export or storing it on a network folder that's not way protected. So if anybody gains access to that person's computer or gains access to the network, they have access to all your Salesforce data as well. And so they can kind of hold you ransom for that or do some deletions or changes and things like that. So you don't have that kind of true data set, true source of truth for that data. And then also if they were some kind of how to attack the employees, they can get passwords, they can get other kind of phishing methods to access the system where they can get inside of Salesforce and other kind of ways you got to look at as well. But those are the kind of main things you got to think about when you're looking at ransomware and Salesforce. It's going to be very hard for anybody to attack Salesforce itself. They're going to have to infiltrate it through your company network and to get into Salesforce. And I don't know if Cash, if you have more to kind of hide on that one or details on that one.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you covered it pretty well. It becomes even more important to retain a backup of your data. What these ransomware guys are doing, I mean, they'll come in, they'll modify your data, they'll delete your data, and if you want to get it back, basically they'll ask for monetary or some other form of payment. By having a backup of your data, one that they can't get access to, even if they run your Salesforce data. You still have that independent backup that's running there. You can at least always get your data back. And so it's kind of like an insurance policy in the case of ransomware.
That's a great segue into our third and final topic, and that is kind of advice and recommendations. I want to go back to you, Chuck, because you talked about the weekly exports. What's your recommendation there for customers with respect to exports?
So as far as it's not the most robust or valuable solution, it does give you an option to protect that data set or have it in a kind of third party or external service when you take those weekly exports, but it's not going to go ahead and protect that data set on the main side. So it's not going to provide you the security that you look for in like a third party application. It's not going to provide you the RPO or the RTO that you're looking for in a robust Salesforce or backup solution. And it's not going to provide you with the automation that you're looking for. Everything has to be done manually using that process. So it just depends on what your kind of compliance levels are, how relevant is that data or how critical that data is inside of Salesforce. Some companies are just using out of the box and put very little data inside of Salesforce. Some people, or most organizations, have Salesforce as their source of truth for that kind of customer data or whatever else they're handling inside of there. And if they were to lose that, it's going to be catastrophic to their company. And it could be revenue losses, brand recognition losses, and different things like that. So it's very critical to take a secure and more robust solution to back up that data set.
And when we think about automate, you both talked about the manual processes before. And of course, we all know, whether we're talking about cybersecurity or not, it's human error that is the biggest challenge and the hardest one to control, if you will. Kesha, what are your thoughts on automation? Because as we both talked about, or we all talked about, you've got to be able to restore the data. That's absolutely business critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I did want to mention earlier that, a lot of people, they put kind of blind faith in these massive SaaS provider companies. And it's one of those where it's, it's too big to fail sort of thing, right? They're so big, they're never going to go down. But if you look, I think it was like sometime last week or the week before, Salesforce was unavailable for, almost 24 hours. And it was a huge outage. And so people get surprised by that. But, again, they're just like any other company. They're run by human beings, and human beings, make errors. And so, and so from that perspective, you want to make sure that no matter what the SaaS provider is, that you do have a backup solution in place. The second part about this is, within these organizations, you have admins, developers that are building out customized, applications within the Salesforce environment. And these scripts can easily go rogue, right? They've got to put a particular condition on there, and now it's updated, 100,000 records in Salesforce rather than, the 10 records they're targeting. And so now, they need to go back and do some sort of data loss incident, or you have a rogue employee who just decides, hey, we're just going to delete a bunch of data and really put these guys in a bind. And so this is just the reality of the nature of the business. It's reality of working with, with folks at any organization. So, the onus comes back on us to protect our own data and to get that data back quickly. And so, again, by having automation there in place, applications there in place, which can very quickly kind of calculate and handle large volumes of data and get that data back very, very quickly. I'm a huge proponent of, again, if it's a small data loss, fine, maybe you can do it manually and it'll take you some time to do it. But in organizations and the amount of data that companies are producing nowadays, there's no way, it's very difficult with any large or medium-sized data loss incident to be able to get that back in any sort of relatively reasonable amount of time. And so I think that it is key that you do need to rely on these sort of solutions that are going to be able to automate and get that data back quickly for you.
As we're seeing more and more organizations build out on Salesforce, these orgs are getting more complex with the relationships. And to do it manually, you have to go object by object, essentially, and make those connections through it, kind of what Kasha was mentioning earlier. And that is just mind-numbing. You're staring at a spreadsheet for 8 hours a day. Who wants to do that all day? When you can just go ahead and with these third-party solutions, click a couple buttons, it runs in the background for you. You go ahead and do your normal work that you want to do that day. And then also with these kind of native solutions, it's not backing up the metadata that's associated with those environments as well. So a prime example was 2019 when Salesforce had this big permission issue with anybody that was kind of using Pardot. They opened up all the permissions for every user inside those orgs, and there was no way that they could recover from it. Pretty much everybody had to go ahead and rebuild their profiles and permission sets inside their environment because no one was taking a backup of their metadata. Salesforce does not cover that stuff. So you definitely want to look for a third-party provider or provider that has a metadata backup as well that covers your profile, permission sets, reports, dashboards, and things like that. So in case something was to happen there, you can get that recovered as fast as possible as well.
Excellent advice, guys. Thank you so much for talking to us about, and our audience, about what the Salesforce data recovery is, what the gaps are, what some of the common misconceptions are about SaaS applications, the shared responsibility model, and leaving our audience with your recommendations. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. I think it was very educational. Chad, Kasha, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Lisa.
For my guests, I'm Lisa Martin. We will see you in 2 weeks with In Cloud We Trust. New topic. Take care.